Nested loops are sort of a more complicated topic in programming, so I'm going to do one more video so you have lots of examples on how you can use nested loops in your programs. So for this example, we have all of these stars and these system.out.println statements to print out a star shape like this with a bunch of stars making a triangle. So we could do this using nested loops as well, instead of using these system.out.println statements. So what you'll see is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and each row has an incrementing number of stars. But this first row, this row 1 has 1 star, row 2 has 2 stars, row 3 has 3 stars, and so on. So what we could do here is I'm going to start I at 1 this time, just so that there's no confusion. And I needs to be less than or equal to 5. And this is going to go ahead and give us 5 rows, because we're going to do 1, we're going to do 2, 3, 4, 5 is equal to 5, or it's less than, it is equal to, so we will go in for this last step and we'll increment each time. Once we get to 6, it will jump out of this loop because 6 is not less than or equal to 5. So this will definitely give us our 5 rows. Now, what we can do inside our outer loop is have another loop that actually handles printing out these stars. So let's make a J. Let's do 1 again. You can use 0. I'm just using 1 in this case so that there's not a lot of confusion, because we are counting by row 1 had 1 star, row 2 had 2 stars. So let's just start with 1 so we don't have to keep doing 0 plus 1 for 1. But you can do it with 0. You can do these loops a million different ways, really. So I'm just going to do it this way, and you can probably try a few other things out on your own time to see that it'll do the same thing. So each row has a certain amount of stars, and this inner loop is going to handle printing out the stars. So let's say we have a star here, and then at the end of each one, we're going to have an empty line. So I'm just going to add that in really quickly. Now, to finish up this part, we know at the end we're going to need an incrementing for J, but what do we put here for less than? Now, recall that when you do these for loops and these inner loops, this I will not update until we get to the end of this for loop. So at the very beginning, when I is 1, we go into this loop. This loop ends with this curly brace, this outer loop. So I is 1. When we go into this inner loop, I is still 1. I will not move to 2 until we're done with everything here. We move on, it becomes 2, and then every time we do this loop afterwards, I is still 2, and we move on. So we know that I has the value of what row we're on, but it also has the value of how many stars are going to be in that row. So what we can do here is use I here. So we could do I is less than or equal to, sorry, J is less than or equal to I will give us what we want. Why? Because when I is 1, that means we're in the first row. We're going to come in here, and how many stars do we have in the first row? Just 1. So we start off with J equal to 1. So now both I and J at this point are both 1. So is 1 less than or equal to 1? Yes. So we print out the star, and then we loop again. At this point, I is still 1 because we haven't made it to the end of the first loop. But J has incremented to 2. And now we're going to check, is J, which is 2, less than or equal to 1? No. So we skip this and we don't print out another star, which is why we only get 1 star on the first loop. Now we move on, we print a line. So we enter here, and now this is the next one. So once we finish printing this out, this outer loop is going to go again. So we increment I. So I is now 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 5? Yes. So we move on to in here. Now J is 1 again because we're starting this inner loop again. J is 1. Is 1 less than or equal to 2, which is what I was? Yes. So we print out a star. Now we move up. J increments here because we increment at the end of every for loop here inside. So J now becomes 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 2 because I is still 2 here? Yes, so we print out a star, then J increments to 3. Is 3 less than or equal to 2? No, so we move on and we enter, and that's how we get our 2 stars. So we keep doing this all the way till we get to the end, and you'll see that we will actually print out the exact same thing we had before with our system.out.println line statements. Now, this is a little confusing because I still have these guys up here. So let's remove this because this is what we have here. And you'll see that this doesn't look exactly like what we wanted. And that's because I accidentally put a print ln here. And what we want is for each row for the stars to be next to each other. So all we have to do here is remove the ln and it should fix everything. I erased the top one so we won't have that first group there. And there we go. We have our 2, 3, 4, 5, and our 1 here. So we have the same structure we had before, just without the system.out.print statements. And this code is a whole lot more clean than having a bunch of system.out.println line statements.